The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society.
Politicians are put there to give you the idea that you have freedom of choice.
Everything you read in the mainstream media is 100% true.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Chopper Prophets. I'm Mike, I'm your host, and today I have the pleasure of speaking with someone who I've wanted to have an interview with for a while, and our schedules just didn't seem to match up. He travels a lot, he's a very busy man, so I'm really, really stoked to have him on the show today. Please welcome Tyler Malinky from Lowbrow Customs.
Hey Mike, how's it going?
It's going good, man. I'm so stoked that we were able to catch up. We've done a little bit of chatting, off on the side before this interview, and I'm just happy that we get a chance to sit down and I can pick your brain a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
So, this is kind of a standard question for this podcast or for this webcast, and it's one that takes people back to their childhood and kind of starts at the youngest that they can remember. Being a kid growing up, and it really tells a lot about the formation of a person in their life, sure, especially, from a childhood standpoint. So tell us a little bit about how you grew up and where you grew up and what your life was like as a kid.
Sure. I don't know, more or less it's pretty average, I guess. Born and raised in Cleveland, Ohio. My parents split when I was like a year old. And so I was raised by my stepdad and my mother, and my dad was a Marine, career Marine. My mom was a nurse. And my dad was around. I had regular contact with him since I can remember. Then he moved to Los Angeles. Actually, he moved to Oxnard up near Ventura when I was maybe 5 or 6. And my brother would go out there every summer for a couple weeks. So since I can remember, I've been traveling, at least around the U.S. He lived on a sailboat out there for 12 years or so. So it was super cool as a kid to go visit and stand a boat and play with sea anemones over the edge of a dock and all that kind of stuff, because we're from Ohio and there's no sea anemones, wave. But yeah, my brother who works with me, a huge part of Lowbrow, Kyle, and I grew up just like a regular, just total regular nuclear family with, blue collar parents, just kind of regular deal. I don't know. I was a nerd, and so was my brother. I was really into computers and messing around outdoors, things like that. An interesting thing, both of us were definitely not allowed to ride motorized vehicles when we were kids or teenagers, forbade by my mother, the nurse, who had, was a home healthcare nurse and took care of a lot of people with who were quadriplegics or paraplegics from things like diving into shallow pools or motorcycle wrecks. So I would ride 3-wheelers with my friend Gabe, unbeknownst to my mother, at his uncle's farms up in Toledo. So we'd go up there and ride 3-wheelers all day and shoot guns with his uncle and have a lot of fun. We built a mini bike, when we were like 12 or 13, messed around with things like that. But I pretty much actually didn't have much of that in my life until I moved out at 18 and bought a motorcycle. So,
so it's safe to say that there were no gun injuries that you can remember, no 3-wheeler major accidents that you can remember.
I had a couple 3-wheeler injuries for sure, because they don't make them anymore for a reason.
Right.
Prone to rolling over. I had a couple racing. My buddy's grandpa up in Toledo, his grandpa was in a car, and I was on a farm access road, and we got big swales on each side. And I remember just going for broke and kind of drifting and getting pulled right down into a swale. So my front tire was down in the ditch, and I hit a rock or something and just went end over end. And I think I smashed my nose in and stuff like that, but I was okay. I think I had an open face helmet on or something. And then that was fine. And then trying to jump a lake in the woods on a 3-wheeler, and I was probably 13. And
wow.
landing and rolling it instantly and hurting my ankle and not wanting to tell my mom, and limping around for a couple of days until I figured I should go to the hospital. And it ended up just being a bad sprain, but I thought it might be broke. But so minor stuff, you know, no life-changing accidents.
So was it, you said your mom was like an in-home healthcare?
Yeah, when I was younger, she was a home healthcare nurse, so she would go to people's houses and apartments and help, you know, people who needed it. And then later ended up being more into like the I don't know, management end of stuff for healthcare. So like working with doctors and stuff. I don't honestly know the exact details, but
yeah. I think there's probably better money in that, and it's probably a little less traumatizing even. I mean, I'm not saying she did one or the other for any of those reasons, but sure. I can imagine
it's a tough job. It takes a right kind of person to help people like that. So, right.
Yeah. So was there, what would you say was the age where you maybe made that transition to two wheels? And if that came later, then we'll back up and maybe cover some other ground. But
yeah, you know, that really kind of, I just got interested in motorcycles, like thinking about a street bike, honestly, when I was probably 17, 18. And I just had seen a vintage Triumph and thought it looked really freaking cool. And, you know, basically saved up some money and started looking around, went, I don't remember where, somewhere in Ohio, went and bought a 1970 TR6, but with a 77 TR7 motor in it, which is a 750cc 5-speed that the guy I bought from his dad dirt tracked it. So it was converted to a right-hand shift. It was just a badass bike, white with a red stripe, beat up, you know, I think I bought it for like $1,700, went with I had a beat up work van. And I went to buy it with no tie downs or no rope or anything because I was that naive. I had no fucking clue how to haul a motorcycle. Right. You know, I was that dude who I've sold bikes to since. And went and got a bike. Up until that time, my brother and my biological dad are total gearheads into hot rods and old cars and stuff forever. I never gave a shit, honestly, about any of that, to their chagrin. But you know, honestly, vintage motorcycles turned me into a mechanic for sure, because I bought a bike, didn't know how to do anything mechanically. And within, you know, a year I was rebuilding the motor and started chopping it shortly after that. And then just got in super deep, you know. Yeah. But I didn't even know I'd never ridden a street bike. I think about it now, and it's funny. I lived on a pretty busy street just out in a suburb of Cleveland called Parma. And I couldn't get the bike started because it ran like shit. So I bump started down the driveway right into traffic, and that's just how I learned to ride a motorcycle. I think about it now, I think it's pretty funny because it's totally not a good idea, you know. Right. I would just bump started down the hill of my driveway into traffic and then just like take off and figure it out on the fly. And I think I just picked it right up and there's no problem. So
that's awesome. So you learned to ride and race at the same time.
Yeah, sure.
That's awesome. Well,
I was always comfortable on a bike. I've never really I've laid a couple bikes down, but I've never really been fucked up. So I feel like I have not yet learned the fear. So I ride fast and I take chances and have fun. That's why I ride bikes, just to get excited and be a little scared.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's something that resonates across the board with anybody who rides, or, you know, gosh, replace that with whatever, you know, sport. You know, some people like to climb and climb rocks with no ropes and things like that. So tell us, let's back up a little bit. How old are you, and what's your current situation as far as like we obviously know where you work, but tell us a little bit about that situation, but start with how old you are. Cause I think that sometimes plays into fear or the realization of our mortality.
Sure. I just turned 35 last month.
Okay.
And
happy belated birthday, by the way.
Yep. Thank you. And I don't know, brief history, I guess. I don't know. I started Lowbrow. I would have been 23, 24-ish maybe. Because Lowbrow has been in business coming up on 12 years now. And it was just kind of like something to do using my skills with my computer skills. I had a sign company. I started when I was 19, and it was just me. I was just self-employed basically. But I did graphic design. I did website design, HTML coding, like in the like 98. I started doing that, and then I lettered like semi trucks and work vans and shop windows and made banners and any sort of sign you can think of. So I had a lot of skills with screen printing and vinyl decals, as well as graphic design and web design. So I had the toolkit. Plus the desire to be heavily involved with motorcycles and customizing bikes and such. So like I was my own customer. So I was trying to buy parts from people and find information online. And I would wonder if the parts I ordered would ever show up, if they would, I couldn't find, you couldn't in 2002, 2003, it's not that long ago, but it's kind of hard to remember what it was like then because there just wasn't the online resources right now. I was an avid member of the Yahoo forum Triumph Choppers, which is actually where I met Big Truth from Chopperhead, probably in the early 2000s. We're still friends and do business together, and always are glad to see each other. But that's like how you get information. Basically posting on forums, asking questions from the other 100 dudes around the United States who give a crap about Triumph Choppers.
Right. Right.
Maybe less than 100 people. Right. But anyway, so I decided to make this website to basically sell some stickers, sell some T-shirts I designed, and get some motorcycle money together. I love to and still love to travel and get tattooed, and that's basically what I did. Was it was just mad money, It'd be like weekends and evenings after my normal job. I would work on the website, I'd draw new shirt designs, find new stuff to carry, like Dice magazine when it first started out. I'm trying to think. That was for sure one of the magazines I carried. I don't even remember what else it was around at that time. I'd go to hot rod shows because there was no bike shows, and set out a little tiny 4-foot folding table or 6-foot folding table with like 2 T-shirts and 4 stickers and like Dice magazine on it. And that's what my vending setup was. I had a 65 Econoline van that I had all that stuff loaded in. And so I would drive around, go to shows and do little vending and stuff.
That sounds very similar to, bands that are just starting off, showing up at a show that they were invited to. They don't get paid for it, or maybe had to pay to be on it.
Made $50 on that weekend, man. I was jazzed because I remember getting my first order for $15 for like some stickers, and I was stoked. Right. I mean, yeah, honestly, it's just a total bootstrap. Like I was broke as shit and just kind of hustled. So
yeah. Well, so let's talk a little bit about where Lowbrow has taken you. And I say that, but I also, I guess in parentheses would say where you probably would have gone anyway, because you have that that tenacious. It seems like you have a tenacious drive. I don't want to say for success, but a tenacious drive to succeed in whatever you're focusing on. Some people would call that passion. So where would you attribute Lowbrow kind of giving you a path to? What would you attribute to Lowbrow in that scenario? If that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, it was like, for instance, what I never have had, nor do I now have a goal for Lowbrow or an end game. Like, I have no plans to sell my company. I don't have some set figure of money or orders to sell or anything. I've got I really have no goal, which honestly in business is probably not the best thing to do. But I just, just have fun. Basically, if I'm having fun and I'm excited every day, that's what I want to do. And I have focused for years to build my company and also my lifestyle to be what I want it to be, which is I want to answer to no one. I want to do what I want to do. I want to go where I want to go because I feel like life is extremely short and I don't want to waste any time, fucking around, essentially. Right. So that's why I've been self-employed since I was 19. I actually tattooed my hand. I was already decently tattooed, but I tattooed my hands at 19 as a job stopper. Basically, I wanted to ensure with my skills of like programming and graphic design that I didn't, sell out to myself and get a job making an easy salary somewhere, but doing something that I didn't want to do. So I decided to kind of fuck myself potentially, my parents were super bummed because they thought I was going to be homeless for sure. Right. But it gave me, it just kind of, I don't know, took out some options, because at that point, in the late 90s, it was also very different. Not like it was that long ago or that I'm that old, but I got fired from fast food jobs in the 90s for having piercings and tattoos, So now you go to Chipotle, I'm pretty sure you have to have stretched ears and tattoos.
Right. Good example.
I got fired from McDonald's, So I don't know. So I guess it's just a change, but I've always wanted to make my own way. And I guess what you were alluding to before is I'm driven and focused, and whether it was lowbrow or, honestly, it doesn't matter what it is. Like, you can name a topic and I can get totally interested in it. Like, I don't sit around, I don't watch TV. I'm interested in probably at any given time 4 or 5 things, and I get super deep into it. Usually when I get to a high enough level of something, like I start losing interest in it, maybe, and I move to something else. And with motorcycles, that's just never ending. So it's just hasn't happened, because there's literally no end to fabrication skill, mechanical ability, riding ability. And plus, I'm a business nerd and I like business, and it's a perfect profession because it's my passion and hobby as well as my livelihood. So.
Some people would call that OCD, or maybe even low spectrum Asperger's or something. But the reason why I'm smiling is because I totally get it. I'm very similar, and I've talked to a few people, obviously, in this community that are the same way. Maybe not in the same exact manner, but they all have that same streak of passion, and they go far enough to where they understand where they feel. Not have mastered it, but to a certain level. Like
80% is kind of what I figure. If I'm in the top 20% or 10% of something, of knowledge or of ability, usually that's pretty attainable. And then when you want to be in the top 95, the top 5% or something, that's going to take 10 times as much work and commitment. And unless it's a true passion, and which I have true passions and callings and everything else, but if it's not something I want to put the next 3 years of my life into, it might be something that I just fall out of a little or whatever. But.
Right. Speaking of which, let's talk about racing a little bit.
Sure.
Why don't you give us just a kind of a quick background or history of how you got interested in it, or was it something you were even interested in, or you just kind of fell into? I
kind of fell into it. I wouldn't say I fell into it. I went from choppers, like being into choppers and custom bikes, into the realm, like from there, I basically got into racing and stock bikes. And basically, the more I know about bikes, the longer I've been in the industry and just an aficionado of it, I just, kind of naturally get into all aspects of it. I used to pretty regularly go out to Pacoima and visit Wes White from 4 Years to Cycle. And spend like a week sleeping on his couch, and then kind of like hanging around at the shop, smoking cigarettes, and we're talking about bikes. I don't smoke, but that's kind of what we did, and talking about bikes. And he was racing at that point. This was probably like 07, 08, 09, and he was racing a few years probably at that point. A 1950s Triumph 500, chasing a record at the Salt Flats. Okay. And he was so enthusiastic when he was talking about it. Like, in one trip in particular, I had a 50s Triumph pre-unit at home that I was building a chopper out of at that time. And it was a narrow Walsall banana tank, and it was a swing arm pre-unit frame with a hardtail that was extended, and it was super narrow. And I had Acront Morad flanged alloy wheels all laced up. It was basically, I was building to be a chopper, but then I was like, oh shit, this is the perfect bare bones for a race project, Right. So I went home from that one particular trip, and decided to just change direction and build a race bike. and race at Bonneville that year, which my first year was 2010, so it was probably 2009. That particular trip to LA changed my my direction on that. And basically, I mean, I don't know, pretty much if anyone who does racing of any sort, or especially it seems like the salt flats and land speed. Once I went out there and raced once, it was just, it's just something I've had to do again and again. It's just a blast. I mean, it's gearhead paradise for a week. It's like getting up at 5 a.m, going out on this, the salt flats, which are gorgeous. Every vehicle there, car or bike, I would describe as like the coolest fill in the blank you've ever seen, but it's 500 of them, So, and all the people surrounding those vehicles are really interesting. They're driven, they're weirdos, they're freaking odd. They're from all walks of life. And it's just a super good mix of people. It's not like the freaking local bike night. You know what I mean? It's just
right.
I don't know. It's like, it's got a good buzz of energy. You race, you freaking break stuff, you fix it. You're with your buddies who are crewing, cracking jokes, just work hard all day, have fun, race, get drunk, sleep 5 hours, and do this and do it again for about a week straight.
It sounds like some of the festivals for, some of the top festivals for musicians out there. Yeah,
it's a blast. And honestly, it's just the culmination of, like, for me, working in my home garage for endless hours, typically at night when my little girl was a baby or real little and sleeping, just tons of time spent taking crap I found at a swap meet, like $50 crankcases and tubing in, sheet aluminum, and then making something that'll propel me at 150 miles an hour down salt flats is extremely pleasing, especially when I look at, late model bikes and with, Harleys with twice the displacement or 3 times the displacement, and they're not even going that much faster than I am. My bike's 50 years older, so that's what I like, is taking something old and slow that should not go fast, making it go fast. I just get a Hayabusa, but it's just not fun. I mean, it would be fun, but it's not. It's a different kind of fun,
Yeah, you don't have the pleasure of taking something that's older, probably go as fast as you're going to try and make it, and then building it yourself. And then, like you said, propel yourself down these, salt flats.
I mean, I'd love to, I'd love to ride a Hayabusa or, whatever, fill in the blank, super fast bike down the salt. And it would be fun and exhilarating, but it would not feel the same. Like, I'll do that right now. I mean, I will get on, it's like no big deal. There's not mental prep or anything. I'll just go do that. That sounds fun. Let's do it. But when it comes down to some old bike that I built, and that's, everything's handmade, and it's exciting when you're doing 150. I feel like I'm doing 300. You know what I mean?
Right.
Keeping vibrating, waiting for the motor to blow. I'm looking at everything, hoping everything, stays together with vibration and all that. So yeah, it's just exciting. It's just a calculated risk, but it's super fun.
Sure. I mean, that's everything in life, right? You count the cost, and you do what you can to prepare, and you do damage control on the things that you can't control. So
yeah.
Tell us a little bit about maybe your influences in racing. I know some people do. Some people have these great, like, well, I remember Joe Smith from 1920 who raced blah, blah, blah. But tell us maybe a little bit about those people who have kind of inspired you, maybe other than obviously Wes, who seems like the weekend or that conversation really changed the direction of your life.
Sure. When it comes to my dual engine bike, there's a few guys. I mean, there's actually a series of guys whose names I don't even know, because I'm just not that privy to the history on some of that stuff. But Boris Murray is an old drag racer at a dual engine Triumph. He just passed away actually this last year, but his dual engine Triumph, who's running nitro and quarter mile, and was doing 180 miles an hour consistently. His fastest bike in the world for I think 4 years.
Wow.
And there's a real famous photo of him at the Bowling Green drag strip with his front tire in the air and just, an 1/8 mile of smoke behind him. I thought he was the baddest motherfucker I've ever seen, So to me, that guy rules. And that's honestly, that's why I went, these guys could build these bikes, and why can't I? I've got a TIG welder, I've got a lathe, I've got, friends who are smarter and better than me if there's something I can't do, So I figured the guys who are building dual engine bikes, literally like on the dirt floor in their barn and really agricultural fabrication ability. So why can't I just make something and go race it?
Right.
And that's exactly what my inspiration was, saying, fuck it, these guys did it, you know, why can't I? And, you know, just made it happen. I just thought it was just cool, you know, as far as a race bike, I just thought it was kind of ridiculous and neat. And there's just not, I mean, there's just very few in the world. So I thought it'd be cool to add one more to the ranks.
So let's step down into maybe the gearhead side of this interview, which I rarely do because, these interviews really focus on the people. But given the fact that you have built a dual engine race bike, what's the benefit of having, two motors in one, let's say in this case, in one bike? I mean, I would think that you would have more torque, but what about? Did I lose you?
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I lost that last.
Okay, sorry. I was sitting there. I was listening. Nothing. No response. Silence, and the camera was still on me. And I thought, this is new for us, by the way. So for all of you who have been watching the past video interviews, much like Tyler said, I get passionate about something. I run the gamut of reading about it and researching stuff, and I've tried just about everything I can think of. And this what we're doing right now using Google Hangouts to record this interview, works well, especially for, like, Tyler is in his house in Ohio and I'm here in Southern California. So it allows us to be able to conduct an interview as if we're sitting right across the table from one another. But you have the technology limits, which we shouldn't have nowadays, but we do. So if we drop each other, you hear those little goofs, that's just life. So
I think I got the most of that question there as far as the benefit of the dual motors. Well, for one, like for Bonneville, for land speed racing, you add the displacement, right? So like I've got two 650 motors, so 1300 cc. So I'm running against 1350 cc class bikes and vintage, which is pre 1956 at Bonneville. So it's like Indians and freaking panheads and knuckleheads. So the Triumph just outperform those bikes when you go cubic centimeter to cubic centimeter. So basically it was a way for me to just take motors that I have an affinity for and know very well and compete with Harleys, which I love Harleys, but I also love to smoke the records because everyone loves Harleys so much. So it's fun to kind of step on them a bit. Absolutely. Snub my nose at them. You do like a tandem bicycle. So you could have, for instance, you build, like I did, two motors exactly the same. But especially when you're talking about parts that are 60 years old and such, you're never going to have two that perform exactly flawlessly the same. It just will never happen. But imagine like an adult and a child riding a tandem bicycle. The kid can still help, even if they're not the same strength. They're not just along for the ride. So with my dual engine setup, single engine bike, say you can do 130, you're not going to add another 100 miles an hour ride in a second motor because you have drag and you have a loss because those motors are mechanically linked and everything else. And also just because it comes down to tuning and experience. I've been racing that bike a few years, but I get so, I run it a dozen times a year, meaning I actually ride it 12 times a year if I'm lucky. So I only can get so much testing done in one time frame. So I might be able to get more out of it than I am, but right now I've run, say, 153 or 154 miles an hour. So that second motor, is giving me, another 30 miles an hour or whatever as it is now. And that should increase. I should get into the 170s, I believe, on gasoline. I'm still running just pump gas. And then if I get into, which I plan, nitro or nitrous, my real goal is I just want to go as fast as I can, add body work onto that thing. And, I'm getting close to touching 200 potentially on that. Wow. And that's what I like about it. It's just ridiculous,
Yeah.
So I want to do it.
It's really intense. I mean, anybody who's ever been, over 100 miles an hour, and I can imagine that it's exponential from there, especially regarding tunnel vision and things like that. But just the physics of going over 100 miles an hour, it's an experience. I've done it. I've only been, and I'm not saying this as a proud moment, but I've only gone about 150 I had when I was about 18. And that was intense. It was pretty intense. Mind you, I was on a freeway, so.
Right.
But yeah, it's got to be intense. What's that experience like for you? I mean, nearing that 200 mark.
Well, I'm nowhere nearing it yet. I'm only in the 150s, and that 200 is a million miles away when it comes to land speed racing. But honestly, the fast, I had a big jump a couple years ago from where I'd run like 130 the first year I campaigned the bike, and the next year I think it was the next year, I forget now, but I think I hit low 150s. And there's a definite difference between, I know when I'm going like 120 or something, but there's a difference visually. I mean, everything you can tell when you're doing 150. There's a definite difference in handling on the bike. Mm-hmm. For instance, at 130, I would just go through the timing lights, kill the motor with the kill switch, just let go of the throttle, and sit up a bit to air brake, and it was no problem. Well, around 150, I did that when I just let go of that throttle, and I went into it unloaded the front end, and it came up, and just went into a quick speed wobble. It woke me up, because if I was doing 160 instead of 150, that might have just freaking just sent it lock to lock, and that would have been it for that bike.
You'd have been a dirt ball on the.
I mean, I think I'd probably be fine. I feel like crashing out there isn't that big of a deal, but the bike would be, probably annihilated. Yeah, I don't think there'd be anything I could use on it. But yeah, so anyway, the learning of the handling on stuff like that is fun. The other thing is, it is one of those things where you're truly, for me, and I think this goes for a lot of racing or sports or sex or certain things where like totally in the moment, I'm not thinking about how my mortgage is due when I'm freaking running down the salt flats or whatever,
Right. Right.
Everything if I'm even thinking, sometimes I'll realize I'm in like, top gear, balls out, and realize like I didn't even realize I did anything. Like I don't remember, you don't remember, I'm going to pull in the clutch, I'm going to shift, blah, blah, blah. Right. It's just you're so in the moment that there is just nothing. It's just like a blank mind, which is a big part of why I do it too. It's just an awesome escape. Like I don't think about my daughter, who I love dearly. I don't think about any of that. You can't, and that's why I like it too. So on top
I've noticed, and I don't know if you'll agree or disagree with this, but I've noticed, in a couple of long rides that I've done, which I'm not that guy. I'm not, not to name drop, but I do. He is an acquaintance of mine, and I consider him a friend. But Rufio, he's traveling all across the country, going back and forth multiple times. I'm sure he experiences this daily. But for me, on some of the longer trips I've taken, it takes a little while. Maybe for me, I think I would say a half an hour to 45 minutes, maybe nearing that hour, where you're riding, and in the first part of that hour when you're riding, your brain, you're just going through all this junk. It could be like when the mortgage is due, when the bike payments due, when this thing is due, all the stresses of whatever. And then right around that hour mark, it seems like I catch myself either singing more to like what's the headphones that are in my ear, I'm singing to the songs, or I'm just kind of listening to it grooving, and all that stuff kind of fades away. What's that like for you to have to go from thinking about all those things, like getting to Bonneville, traveling to, getting all your stuff there, and then now you're on the bike and you got to go without thinking about something? I mean, does it just kind of disappear for you, or do you really
every winter I do major changes to the bike, rebuild the motors, changes to the drivetrain, whatever, changes to the riding position, whatever. So usually, probably always, my first run on the bike when it's been rebuilt, I'm nervous. Like I'm not scared, but I'm pretty fucking nervous, in a healthy way. Like I think, it's just a natural reaction.
Right.
But when I am, and you're in full leathers, it's potentially, 100 degrees out. You've been sitting in line, so you're hot, there's stress, you'd be uncomfortable. When the starter, he'll point and he'll say, shield down, flip your shield down your helmet. He'll point you, course is clear, go. No joke, as soon as he points at me, like it's game on, and it's just like probably like my brain stem taking over. You know what I mean? It's just like that survival aspect where I'm not, there's no conscious thought really happening there. So it just falls away. Like then I mean, that's it. There's no nervousness or anything. You know, that's just gone. And then after that, it's gone too. So it's usually just like that, like kind of that anticipation. And then after that, you know, I don't know. I just want to frickin' race as much as possible, as quickly as possible.
Well, I found too, it takes a while for of the world of worries to come back after something like that. Like for me, you know, even taking a run down south a ways, after that hour and then after the ride, usually it's like a day or two goes by before I start really feeling just the anxieties of life.
Sure. I think that's like it sounds a little corny, but it is like meditation. I ride bicycles a lot and I run a lot, and that's the same for me as riding motorcycles. Oftentimes my best ideas are like in the middle of an hour-long run or a multi-hour bicycle ride, you know, because I'm just, you know, you're just kind of out of your normal environment as well. You know, you don't have a phone ringing or, you know, kids yelling or dogs barking or whatever. Right. Well, it's what I have here. And then, but it just lets, I don't know, clears my head, you know? Yeah,
absolutely. Well, let's talk a little bit about, you know, where do you see, and I know you said you don't really have a plan, but because you did claim this, so I'm going to put it back out there for you, because you're a business geek and you enjoy that aspect. I think geek is just synonymous for being passionate about something. I mean, there's obviously the social awkwardness that comes along with being a nerd or a geek, which, I mean, believe it or not, I was too. And I think if people knew what I did for a day job, they'd probably still think I was a geek. But that being said, what do you see as the future for Lowbrow? I mean, you've built something from the ground up that I think, and it's just my opinion, has sustainability built into it. I mean, you know, barring any like major national catastrophe, where do you see the future of Lowbrow being?
You know, I'm pretty much kind of on par with what we've been doing. Like 5 years ago, Lowbrow, probably 5 years ago, Lowbrow was myself, my brother, and Katie, Kyle, my brother, and Katie, who are, you know, still work at Lowbrow. And at that time, I would have told you, "Fuck no, I never want a warehouse. I never want 10 employees. You know, blah blah blah. Forget that." I actually visited W&W Motorcycles in Germany, which is a German company. They're a distributor as well, sell retail direct and such. And they have like 50 employees. And I went there, and it's such a freaking cool company with a good vibe, soulful, and they do amazing things like ride knuckleheads to the Arctic Circle, ride shovelheads through Patagonia in South America. Like they make money and spend it just having so much goddamn fun doing rad stuff. And like, I can totally appreciate that it's not about making money. It's about they take care of their employees, they have fun, they're passionate. That's all I want to do. So that changed my viewpoint. So I was like, okay, well, maybe some more employees or this or that isn't a bad idea. And I also have very deep punk rock roots where like my knee-jerk reaction is to say, fuck all that. And I'm, you know, potentially when I was 19, I was as close to living under a bridge as I was to starting a business for sure. So
awesome.
But now I've got, you know, we've got 14 employees, and I've had a warehouse for a few years, and I love it. I mean, several of my best friends are employees. My brother, my mother is our accounting manager now. So I've got family involved, got friends, and other employees who I've only met, you know, since I've hired them in recent years, are all friends. We're all close. Everyone kicks butt and is part of the team. And it's definitely making Lowbrow better for us to work at, as well as for the customer and availability of parts. And it just ended up being fun. Like I thought it would be like this big line to toe, which in a way, I mean, I've got more stress of responsibility because what I know is I've got, you know, 14 employees who work and plan on working at Lowbrow for a long time. Some of them have families, some of them have kids. Right. You know, they live in houses and eat food and need to keep paying for that stuff. So for me, I have the responsibility of making sure they have that job and that I help take care of them and their futures and all that. So there's more responsibility there, but you know, that it's not really stressful, but it's something I'm aware of, you know?
Sure.
So we're a real business, and I don't mean that condescendingly to any other companies, but we've got a bunch of employees. You know, there's a lot of people that branch out from those employees that depend on us. And I want to keep doing that. I want to provide a good job, place to work. You know, I want them to get holiday bonuses and paid vacations, and we pay for motorcycle endorsements and tests and safety courses if they want it. And, 401ks and matching bonuses, all kinds of crap. You know, we spend a ton of money to make quality of life for employees as good as possible. To me, that's, as important. Their personal lives is important to me as their work life, which is also very important. So, that's a big change. Essentially, I guess, getting back to the original question with the future would be doing what we're doing. My main job and what I enjoy is product development. I like literally doing a napkin sketch to a CAD or SolidWorks file, to prototypes, to being at some little bike show in the middle of nowhere or some other country and seeing parts on a motorcycle that I personally designed. It's very fulfilling. It's my creative outlet, So basically, I want to make more. I want to make parts. I want to continue to do what we've done since the very beginning, which is be a spot to find parts and riding gear and apparel and stuff, but especially parts from brands worldwide. And we carry a ton of stuff. I think we have over a couple hundred brands, including plenty of one-man shops operating out of a garage in many different countries in Europe and US and elsewhere. And that's what we've kind of always done, and we'll continue to do. So I want to always be that source to find, quality stuff that's cool. Some of which, we might only sell 12 a year or something, but it's neat to and fulfilling to be the source for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what I would say, like my impression of Lowbrow, is that you've come up to be kind of that go-to place for not only as a distributor for other gear, but also as boutique stuff. Like you said, maybe there's someone that only makes 12 parts a year, and they might be kind of costly, but it's made in the USA, and it's well made, and being that outlet for that, or being that carrier, for lack of a better term. I think that's important, especially to a community that thrives on home built stuff, that likes to know that who they're working with isn't just trying to make the Forbes 500. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Sure.
So let me ask you this: when you come to a show, whether it's a small little indie event in the Midwest somewhere, or overseas, or it's Born Free, how do you feel when you walk into a show? Do you feel like Tyler Malinky, Lowbrow Customs, or do you feel like socially kind of awkward motorcycle enthusiast?
Everyone who knows me makes fun of me, because the way I feel is I got to get the fuck out of here right now. I'm awesome. So uncomfortable in situations like that at all. I'm way more apt to be like hiding behind a tree at one of our campouts, so I can just fucking be quiet and alone. I'm not the limelight guy. That's why it probably took 2 years to get this interview with me. I'm just some fucking nerd who sells crap, t-shirts and parts. And it's just no big deal. So when I get to a show, it makes me nervous, because I'm I'm an invert for sure. So I tend to, oftentimes at shows, a couple beers will help, even though I almost never drink beer. Helps loosen me up a little bit to talk and all that stuff. And it's not that I don't want to talk to, meet people and this and that. I'm just socially awkward. So,
I think it's something that's, my wife and I talk about this a lot, actually, because she is the polar opposite of, I wouldn't say polar opposite, maybe that's a little harsh, but she is the opposite of me in a lot of ways. 1% of the female population. And so it's, when we get along really well. And when we don't get along, it's like having, ready to throw blows with another dude. So, and I'm sure there's many people that can kind of relate to that. But the reason why I'm saying that is not everybody is, an extrovert, always on, like, can't wait to go to the, whatever the latest and greatest thing is and meet people I can handle that. My personality, I can go and be around a lot of people. Mind you, as I get older, only for a limited amount of time, because then I come home and I'm exhausted. But there are also the other side of that spectrum, introverted people who tend to be the idea, the idea people, the makers, the creators, and not really the limelight, folks. But I guess I'm just kind of saying this more as, when you meet somebody who might be your quote unquote, chopper hero, not to expect them to be something that they're not, because they're just people, they're people like you, like me. And if you ever do get kind of a weird vibe from somebody, my philosophy in life is just, don't hold them against them, because it's likely that they're overwhelmed, Right.
Yeah. I've gotten much better over the years from being in business too. Cause I've got to make phone calls, I've got to talk to people. I've got to, all that. So I've gotten way better. There was a period in my life where I don't feel like I said many words like ever, So, I've gotten way better at it, but I tend to be, just kind of nervous, I guess. So.
Awesome. Well, let me run through a couple questions. These are just going to be some random questions for you. And I know the answer to this first one already, but dogs or cats?
Dogs, I would say.
Okay. And I probably know the answer to the second one too. Harleys or Triumphs?
I would say Triumphs, just because, Harleys are a little too popular to give them any more support. They're great and all, but.
So burgers or tacos?
Tacos. Fish tacos.
And I was going to say, what kind of tacos is good? Do they have any good fish taco places in Ohio?
There's some good Mexican food around here still. It's funny because we're pretty far north, and you go north of the border into Canada, and there's like no Mexican food. There's some bad Mexican food around here, but there's some good stuff, but not obviously not comparable to Southern California or Austin or stuff anywhere in the Southwest, of course. But
so we know one of the reasons why you travel often is for good fish tacos.
Yeah, ride motorcycles, eat tacos.
Right, exactly. Gosh, that should be the next. So, Bill, if you're watching this one, this should be the next EDR thing. Ride motorcycles, eat tacos.
That was our joke when we went down to Texas for the Giddy Up show.
Okay, yeah.
Because it was winter, snow in Ohio. We went down there, we were riding motorcycles around, going to different swimming holes, hitting a different taco stand every 2 hours, and it was. Can't beat riding motorcycles and eating tacos and going swimming. So
not at all. There's not much. Add some beer to that and you'd be fine. And I'm not a prolific beer drinker, but I do enjoy a beverage and some tacos riding motorcycles. Let's talk about something that maybe isn't a happy time in a lot of people's lives. And I know for me, and I think I can safely say this for a lot of people, it was more of a devastating time. But I think Lowbrow did something that kind of helped out. Well, I know it helped out. So tell us a little bit about maybe what your thoughts are. How should I word this? Tell us maybe what your feelings were behind Larry Pierce's passing, and kind of what you guys were able to do to help out. And I'm saying this mostly for the benefit of those who didn't maybe get to know Larry personally, and also, who as quiet maybe as you wanted to keep it. Obviously, there was something that you guys did to help out. So tell us a little bit about that.
I was in San Diego actually at the time. The Sunday morning, he had passed away the night before. I woke up to a text from my brother, and it just said, "Fuck, dude, Larry's dead." And I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? I couldn't believe it. It didn't register as like a statement of fact or of Larry Pierce, honestly, all through that day, I was kind of going like, still thinking like maybe it wasn't true, like thinking it was something. So it was crazy. I actually haven't really experienced that as an adult. I guess I haven't known someone really close that I really, have cared about that's died since I was younger. So, we were just blown away. Knowing Larry and Ashley closely for years, that was a fucking I mean, just tragic. I mean, especially when it knows their relationship and how they were together. It was just like, that's the worst part about it too, is because he thought how Ashley was doing, and how she felt about it, and was coping. In any case, there's like an outpouring of support pretty much right away from the motorcycle community. Larry was like the genuinely funniest, goofiest guy. I think of him like in Cincinnati, Ohio. We had at the V-Twin convention, it would be a bunch of guys, and we're, Pat from Lead Sled and Larry and us, and a bunch of guys just at some club, after the V-Twin convention closed, and Larry just going off, tearing up the dance floor, loving every minute of it to the worst pop songs possible and stuff. I mean, that's how I imagine him. We sold, or we got, garage company shirts and handlebars and some of their parts and such. And we just decided to, and we printed their shirts for them. So, we print the shirts in-house at Lowbrow. So we just said, Kyle, it was actually Kyle's idea. And then he actually went through a friend, Billy, in Alabama, because Ashley wasn't even talking to anyone. This was like 2 days later.
Right.
Just decided to print basically as many shirts as would sell, and then just give that money to Ashley. The tough situation was just that they weren't married, but they had a shared life together. So it was a bad situation because, she lost him and then might have lost kind of her whole homestead and, way of life, with their shared life, because a lot of it legally was in his name. And we thought that if Larry obviously if he could have known or planned, obviously he would want her to have everything and to be able to continue their life how they had led it, as much as possible. So anyway, we printed shirts and just gave all the money to Ashley and her family to take care of the estate, Larry's family, and then just take care of kind of all the legal stuff and loose ends and help support them. So the last thing you want to worry about through something like that is like going to work too. What I mean? It's just super rough. So it was insane, honestly, the amount of support the motorcycle community gave by buying a shirt. I mean, I think we sold I think it was like a couple thousand in like 2 days. So, I mean, it blew me away. It was probably 10 or 15 times what I expected. We were going nuts filling those orders. And Ashley was, of course, so appreciative. I mean, she was blown away by everyone's support. So for us, it was honestly a very minor thing. It was just having having the I guess audience, being able to spread that word of it, and then having the operation in place, meaning like our normal shipping and receiving and warehouse and all that stuff. And t-shirt printing, we had all the tools at our disposal to make that happen like quick and seamlessly. And so we did, so it was the support of all the people who bought shirts, not us in particular. And I mean, I know there were people who were buying like 50 shirts and would say, don't actually send the shirts, I just want the money to go to them. Stuff like that. So, so I don't know. It was good to see that support, and the Never Forget Larry Pierce and the Ride for Larry Day and all the stuff that support that shows that he was appreciated. I'm sure it would have freaking blown him away because he was very mild mannered. Well, I don't know. That's not the right description. Not mild mannered, but he was. I think he would have been embarrassed about all the support, honestly.
I think he would have too. The first time I met him was at the People's Champ was it Born Free 4? I think it's Born Free 4. Anyway, I met him at the People's Champ. Maybe it was Born Free 5. I can't remember. But I met him, and him and Ashley were at Cook's Corner. And I remember walking through the crowd, and easy for me because I'm freaking Sasquatch going through the crowd. I can see over everybody, and I see this little dude. And I say little dude, big stature, shorter in, or I should say huge personality, shorter in stature, Larry. And he turns to me in the midst of talking to a bunch of people, and immediately like his eyes open up and he's like, and his arms go out and he comes over and hugs me. And that I had one interview with him, via FaceTime. And I feel like I really got to know him through that interview and through the hour. I think it was an hour that we talked before and about 40 minutes or so after the interview. But that I guess my point is what he did is what everyone I've spoke to has said that he did for them. he really, when you were talking to him, he made you feel like you were the center of the universe.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
And so I didn't get a chance to say this at the time when all this was going down, but, thank you to you and the whole team, and obviously to everybody who stepped in and bought stuff to help support. And because money obviously doesn't mean anything in the midst of losing somebody, but it does mean something after all the grieving in the morning has passed and it's starting to fade, and you've got all those bills, like you said, in the legality of someone passing. So just thank you. Thanks for doing the right thing. Yeah,
I appreciate it. Yes, like I said, it worked out really good, and it was just a lot of people that came together to help make that happen. So I'm glad. I'm glad we can do stuff like that once in a while. Anything you can do when you have enough communication with people, there's enough, eyes or ears or whatever. It's great. I feel like you got to use that to make good things happen because, wearing the motorcycles is ain't exactly saving lives, so whatever good we can get out. And not there's anything bad about it, but any positive things, support we can do for charity and this and that we can do by, kind of reaching out for little donations in that way, I think goes a long way,
I agree. I wanted to ask you one more thing kind of about Lowbrow. Mm-hmm. Tell us about the Lowbrow Get Down. Are you guys going to continue to do this year over year?
Yeah, I think so. It's honestly one of my favorite events we do because it's just all fun and very little work involved. We do, I honestly don't know if this was our fourth, fifth, or sixth. I'll go with the middle one. I think we missed a year somewhere, but it's usually one of those weekends that's so much fun. But if I went to church, I would need to go to church afterward and eat a salad and do some yoga or do something to, just to kind of like take care of my body after trashing it for a weekend. But we invade Nelson's Ledges Quarry Park, which is a privately owned campground. I think it's a few hundred or 400 acres, old rock quarry mm-hmm. that hit a fresh spring, I think in the 60s or so, and flooded. And then it was abandoned, and it was like a biker and hippie hangout, for a period in the 70s. Some point in the 80s, it became kind of a campground, and it's just been known as a really wild spot. Just very free-spirited. And I'd been years ago calling around to parks and stuff, giant campgrounds, saying, "Oh, we're going to have 50 or 100 friends on motorcycles, and we're trying to, find spots to camp," and people just hang up on me and stuff. So I called Nelson's Ledges, where I camped since I was 18, on and off. And I said, we're going to have maybe 100 friends out on motorcycles. Like, yeah. Well, and, they just couldn't care less. So I was like, all right, perfect. Basically, they let us do, whatever we want. You can't swim at night, but aside from that, it's pretty much game on. It's awesome quarry, cliff jumping, sand beach. There's a little island in the middle. Beautiful woods. The camping is awesome. There's a state park right next door. That's sandstone cliffs called Nelson's Ledges. You can go climb at. Okay. And it's a great weekend. Ride out, hang out. We got sponsored by PBR, Yingling, Cleveland Whiskey. So we had lots of beer and booze we hand out. Pizza Hut gave us 48 pizzas this year or something. We usually put a bunch of money into a barbecue or some other meal and bands. We had this year was going to be extremely hard to top. We had David Allen Coe on Friday night and Blue Oyster Cult on Saturday. It was just a blast. It was a good mix of people, for the Get Down as well as, hippies who kind of live there normally. And people who were there to see David Allen Coe or Blue Oyster Cult, so it was a great mix. And we're definitely doing it again next year. We'll have to figure out what bands we're going to get. That camp, Willie Nelson played there this summer as well. Willie Nelson would be an awesome one to try and get. It all depends on
that. Would be amazing.
Working with Nelson's Ledges Campground, they're real helpful. So we kind of split, setting that kind of stuff up because they kind of draw on the regulars and we bring in a bunch of people. We had guys from Nevada, Wisconsin, Texas, all over Canada and all over the East Coast and Midwest. So we had, honestly, I have no idea, maybe 500 to 1,000 people or something. I don't even know. But there was a lot, and it was just a steady stream of bikes and, good times.
I think just a comment, regarding get-togethers and stuff, West Coast versus Midwest or East Coast. It seems like, and I know a lot of people look to the West Coast for some reason for kind of the definitive shows, if you will. And I feel like ever since I started looking at this community and inside this culture, that while we might have a show once a year or 2 shows once a year, and they draw a lot of people, that it's my opinion, and again, I'm not saying this to hurt anybody's feelings, but it's my opinion that from the get-go, East Coast, Midwest rides or ride to type destinations, campouts and things like that, I feel like I'm missing out. I really do.
Yeah.
It seems like it has more of this homegrown. I know there's a lot of planning that goes into it. It's not just, hey guys, let's take off. We're going to go meet at this Nelson campground on the weekend. But it feels like it's more of a homegrown community type thing versus I think what you see on the West Coast is, a well planned out, obviously, and a lot of people show up and a lot of good people, people putting it on and such, but, not the same as like, our friends from show class doing and I say show class, but I know it's show class and the Death Science guys doing the North Carolina, run down the coast and stuff,
right.
and just everything, the Gypsy Run, all that stuff.
Yeah. I think going to California a lot and being involved in a lot of shows out there, a big part of it is just like the bureaucracy of California. We do that party, we have 1,000 people show up. There's no cops show up. You know what I mean? Right. There's no permits involved. We just do it. We just did Fuel Cleveland in the first one in May in downtown Cleveland, 4 blocks, maybe 6 blocks east of City Hall in downtown, and had just a shit ton of people. The streets were full, freaking blocking the streets, people doing wheelies and surfing bikes and everything else. And, there were cops there, and I, introduced myself, said, hey, it's my event. If you need anything, let me know. And they were just like, well, we're just looking at bikes. There's just such a shit. Now that doesn't fly everywhere, but in Cleveland there, that works, there just would not happen in so many places, There we had a buddy who lives in a warehouse that we could use the warehouse for free, and just have a bunch of, bikes come and photographers show up and show some stuff. And I actually started filling out permit stuff for that. And it was like 40 pages long. So I threw it in the trash and went, screw it, I'll just do it. And yeah, there's no problem. And when it comes to just other things like that, like rides and shows and events around the East Coast and Midwest, I think there's just less people in most cases. It's less dense, that is. So there's just more places to do it. Honestly, if we didn't do the Get Down at Nelson's Ledges, I don't know, Lowbrow's shop is on 22 acres of land. We can just do a freaking party there. There's just a lot of things like you don't have 22 acres of land with your warehouse in Southern California. Right. So there's just a lot more options,
One major reason why I'm looking personally to get the heck out of California.
Yeah, there's, like every pros and cons, like everywhere else.
Yeah.
We have a winter, big con, but cheap living is a big plus.
And see, I think most people in California, we sacrifice the fiscal irresponsibility to live here because it's ridiculously expensive. Yeah. For that great weather, we can ride year round, except for today and the last couple days. It's been raining on and off, but
no sympathy for that.
What's that? Yeah, no sympathy at all.
No sympathy for rain, man.
You guys, I know, Pacific Northwest, all across the top, virtually in Midwest and out in the East Coast, it's like wintertime comes and, most guys would say average of like 4 months with no riding.
Right. So. Oh yeah, for sure. I remember I got out this last January one day and it was about 20 degrees Fahrenheit, but the roads were dry and clear. But it's, there's a foot of snow on the ground. It went for a probably 15 or 20 minute ride and then couldn't get into my garage because my hands wouldn't work to turn a key. But it was so much fun with those miserable conditions. I was just so excited for spring. But typically, I'll go months without riding a motorcycle, at least in Ohio, if I'm lucky enough to go to the West Coast or something. And either sometimes I have a bike sitting out there from like when we do EDR or Born Free or something. or borrow a bike, you know, and get a little bit of riding. But it's not like the normal day-to-day thing. So
yeah,
you know.
Well, let's. I want to ask you a couple questions, maybe just to close off the interview. And
Sure.
I moved away from these questions for a little while, and I don't know. I'm just going to dump them out here and see what you think.
Sure.
What is the hardest or most difficult situation that you have ever found yourself in? And it could be anything. I mean, you know, I've had people comment from you know, a death of their parent to a divorce and things like that. But what's kind of the worst situation you've ever found yourself in, and how did you get through that?
Mine, it's not bad now at all, but at the time it was hard, which I had a big shakeup in my life 4 years ago or so, maybe 4.5. I was married, and my daughter at the time was like 1.5 years, and my ex-wife, like totally to me out of the blue, was just kind of like, I'm moving out, I'm done. And basically, more or less, like, this is a shorter version because it took a year of me trying to save stuff and her living as a single woman, basically. But basically, she split, and I've been a full-time single dad since then, with raising my daughter. And it was hard at that time. You know, now I'm so glad. I'm divorced and things worked out the way they did. And I've been very happy for years, but there was definitely like a year or more that was really rough. That actually were some of the most exciting years for Lowbrow, like getting our current building and all kinds of stuff that I just honestly didn't really, I mean, it happened, so I was working at it, but I just didn't really care. You know, I was just like, yeah, fucking bummed. So that was hard at the time, but like I said, I'm totally fine and happy with how things worked out. And I wouldn't change anything, honestly, because I'm so happy with my life today that I wouldn't disrupt anything because I wouldn't want to change it. You know, I'm so happy with my family life and my home life and all that. So that would be the hardest thing. And it just fucking sucked and was worrisome for multiple reasons, including the business, you know, because it could have freaking ended my company, you know, so the divorce, you know, so right. Luckily it didn't. That's been the roughest thing I've personally gone through, and things pertaining to that, you know, just all kinds of shitty stuff. So,
well, what was, you know, on the upside of that, what's the best thing that you've ever experienced in life?
I cliche, but my daughter is like,
yeah,
you know, a cliche for a reason, because I mean, I love kids. I'm a family man. That's my deal. I want more kids. I love just that regular stuff, man. You know what I mean? Like, just my little girl getting off the school bus. I love making dinner and hanging out. I love the weekends when we don't have to get out of bed and watch cartoons and all that stuff. So that's the best thing for me. That's why I would change. That's one of the reasons I would change nothing, because despite the shitty things that kind of, you know, were part of having my daughter, as far as my ex, you know, my marriage flying partner, all that crap, you know, it's totally worth it. So,
yeah,
you know.
I can understand that. I really can. What piece of advice for all those people out there who are entrepreneurial, they have the passion, they have the drive to want to put something together or make something happen, but, you know, don't have the experience or haven't experienced it before. What would you encourage them with?
A couple things. One would be focus on one thing. I've seen so many people who could have done something great or made one of their endeavors a big success, but because they've got 6 things going on, they've got, you know, they're a singer in a band, and they've got a freaking normal job, and they're trying to build bikes, and they're trying to fill in the blank. Like, you're never going to be, very likely you're not going to be great at any one of those things. So stop all the other bullshit, man up or woman up, and just fucking do it and focus. The other thing I would say is I've gotten a lot of knowledge and saved myself much time and headaches and heartache with mentorship. You know, basically just through my life, and it just happened naturally since I was probably in my late teens, but someone typically older than me, not always the case though, who I admire, who's got a skill set or has done something that I want to do. And essentially, just being friends with them, asking questions, asking for support, asking for points of view, being open to what they have to say, not having to figure out every damn thing for yourself. So for me, I've got a few people, close friends who I'd also consider mentors. And that's kind of always ongoing. It seems like I kind of add to that as I get older, or I'm like kind of have questions in a different area or whatever, I'm always just looking for that relationship. And I think it goes both ways too, and both people really get something out of it. So that would be my other piece of advice, or something that's worked for me.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Tyler. I really appreciate your time, man. And sure. Like I said, I'm stoked that we finally got to sit down and talk. We played tag for the last couple of years, and I know it's not because you don't like me. at least I think it is. But yeah, thanks for spending some time with us and sharing your wisdom in your life. And I wish you the best, in the future. And I think you're doing some good things, man.
Cool. Thanks, Mike. I'll see you, I'm sure, hopefully at some point. Hopefully this winter I'll see you in California. So that means I won't be in Ohio at some point, hopefully. So.
Come enjoy some warm weather.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks again, Tyler. You take care, man.
Thanks, Mike.